Hi, my name's Sam Moss. I'm an author, and I also run a online literary venue called Ergot. I'm going to be doing a short video today about versioning your manuscripts or your stories, essays, poems, anything like that. So, versioning just means having multiple copies of a story as you write it or edit it or just progress through the production process. And, versioning can be really helpful for a number of reasons. Um, Obviously, having a record of your work as you progress through it can be really helpful. But one thing that I've found is that it actually kind of gives you a degree of freedom in changing your work. Um, and I'll give an example of that in a little bit. So this should all be pretty simple, but I'm gonna walk through it. It's a process that I've found to be helpful and that I've settled on, and I feel it gives me a degree of kind of freedom in my work that working in the same document might not provide you. So just to maybe give some contrast, and I work in Pages. You should be able to do this in Word or some other program as well. But let's say I'm writing my story. Okay, I've got my story here. I've got maybe my first paragraph, and come to my second paragraph, and I'm going to write a long, winding section about the character's backstory, and then we come to the ending here. Maybe I come over here and I put in a new section with some action. And so let's say I'm going through the story, editing, and I decide that this long winding section about the character's backstory, it's just not really working for the story, or maybe I want to send out a version that doesn't have that. So, well, okay, obviously the first thing I'm going to do after I write my story is I'm going to save it. So I'll come in here, go to migrate. I'll do my great story. I'm going to save this in my Dropbox. So we'll go to my documents here, and we'll go into my stories. And one thing I like to do too, usually, is I create a new folder where I'll put all the versions of the story. So I'll do my great story here, and I'm going to save my great story in here. Okay, so we've got my great story saved. So one thing that I could do is I could delete this section. So we'll go like that, and then I can save this document, right? And so if I saved this, I'd have no record of this section here, and that can be kind of can be a little scary, right? There's a part of me that says, well, what if I want to put this back in down the line? So instead of deleting this story, or deleting this line rather, and saving the story, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a version of this. There are a couple different ways you can do this. One way that I found that works really well is most programs will have a duplicate feature. So usually each day, or whenever I sit down to write and I have something like this that I'm working on, I usually do this with smaller, maybe short stories or poems. I wouldn't do this necessarily with a novel manuscript, although you certainly could, but that can grow pretty quickly. But I'm just going to take this, sit down to work in the morning. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I want to make sure that I have a copy of the story as it stands. So if I ever want to look back and see, oh, what was this like, when I was working on it? So I'll just come in here. I'll go to duplicate. We've got this new version here, right? So this is the version I was working on. We've got this new version here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, I'm going to do V1 like that, and I'm going to save it. And so you can see now, if we go in here and we go to the stories, and we go to my great story here, you can see I've got my great story V1. And so the great thing is, it can feel really natural. This process feels really natural to me, because then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to close Migrate Story View when we've kind of got the snapshot of the story at this point. I'm going to delete this, or I'm going to not delete it, but I'm going to just close it out. I'm going to go back to working in what I would call maybe the main or the canonical manuscript here. This is just called Migrate Story, right? So then I'm going to delete this section, and we'll save this one. So now we've got the saved version in V1. We've got this one. So then the next thing I'm going to do, I've worked on this little bit, I saved it, great. I come in, the next day, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in each morning, do the same thing. You don't even have to think about it. You just go duplicate. And, you may have to check, like, okay, which version am I on? So I've got my Migrate Story 1, Migrate. So this one, I would do Migrate Story V2, save that, right? Delete that one. We come in, add a new long section where the main character is chased through a maze or whatever. Okay. So then, I'm working on this, and I'm like thinking back, and I'm like, oh man, that section of the childhood sure was great. So, all you have to do, you don't have to worry about it. You can just come in here, just grab this part, and just copy this basically. Put that in there. And I've got it, and you don't have to worry about losing it, which is really nice. And, so I think one of the hardest things when you're writing fiction is cutting stuff. And, there's a couple reasons for that. One of the reasons is, you don't want to kill your darlings, right? You worked hard on this stuff. You don't want to lose it. But there's also that feeling that, oh, what if I want to put this back in? If I get rid of this, I don't want it to be gone forever. And I think, versioning like this can certainly help, at least with the latter, maybe with the former as well. So, versioning, it's real easy. I'll, just kind of recap. I'll just go back and show it again. So, you want a third version, or you just come and you sit down again. All you do, you just take this main manuscript here that you're going to be working in. Just hit duplicate. We got another one. So I think this would be V3. Save that. And, so now, again, you go into, go in here, Migrate Story. We've got these all locked up. You got the times they were saved here. Of course, this one, edited a little bit. So, or I guess that's the oldest one. But yeah, and so that's versioning. Super simple. Can really help your workflow. And then, of course, maybe the second lesson here is just putting all the versions into one folder here that can keep things organized. So yeah, that's my video on how to version your stories. Again, my name is Sam Moss. I'm an author, and I run a website called Ergot. Thanks for watching.